I can hear something calling. It's calling me every day. If taking a chance is a crime, then I've got hell to pay. I've been walking the streets in my mind, trying to find a new day. Keep on searching until I will find, until I find a new way. I'm gonna say something, I hope you don't mind. It's time to rearrange. I walk round in circles, I'm going nowhere. It's time to make a change.
Hey Ross, how you doing? Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Charles. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, I think that this will really resonate, especially with, I think it'll resonate with a lot of people, but especially the men who watch and listen. So I'm really excited for that. With that being said, would you mind giving a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure, thank you. So I'm a physiotherapist by background. So I've been in healthcare since the late 90s. But I guess the context of our conversation today is I'm now involved in a different part of health, and it's men's health. And that stems back to my own experiences. So back in my early 30s, I was tired, achy, putting weight on, a little bit irritable, generally just not feeling myself. But I went to the doctors and they just said I was getting old. And this is early 30s. They just said, maybe you're stressed, maybe you're depressed, just kind of get on with it. I didn't accept that. I think having a healthcare background, I kind of was maybe a little bit more able to diagnose what was going on. And so I asked for a second opinion, saw a different GP. He ran some blood tests and said, yeah, maybe your thyroid's not working. Referred me to an endocrinologist. I saw three endocrinologists in the
Hmm.
end because I didn't believe what any of them said. And essentially, they all said the same thing, which is there's nothing wrong with you. It's all in your head. Now, the first two were a little bit more um, careful with their words. Literally, the last one used those words with me. And at this point, my symptoms were so bad. I remember driving home from work one day and I gave myself a little mental challenge to name all the things in the car. And I couldn't even tell you what a steering wheel was called because it was like thinking through concrete. I just couldn't formulate any thoughts in my brain. And I got home, it was pretty scary. I said to my wife, I can't carry on like this. I know something's wrong with me. And we went private. In the UK, most people have public health. I went private for the first time ever. I saw this doctor down in London and he said, what's wrong, Ross? I said, it's a long story, Dr. Willis. I remember this vividly because he said, you've paid for an hour. You can talk for an hour if you want. and, uh, and I did. I talked for 58 minutes. I told him how I felt like, I said, I've said this to all the doctors and they've all said I'm crazy. I said, I feel like an antique toy robot. I said, I want someone to put the key back in my back and wind me back up again because I feel like I'm running out of wind. And at the end, you just went, it's obvious what's wrong with you. Your testosterone's low. Um, it's obvious. How can it be obvious? I've seen five doctors. Three of them were endocrinologists, specialists in health, in hormones. And he said, the general, the general medical fraternity don't believe in this. I was like, a bit skeptical. Can you prove it? He said, yeah, we'll do a blood test. If it comes back here to here, I was wrong. If it comes back here to here, we can probably fix it naturally. But if it comes back below here, you need HRT. I said, HRT? Like, what middle-aged women take? This is me in my early 30s. And he said, yes, men need it too. I was like, wow, okay, well, let's do this test, see if you're right. Still a bit skeptical. Never used private healthcare before. I thought he just wanted to sell me something. But he did the test. He was absolutely right. Started me on HRT. Within weeks, I felt different. Within months, I felt like a completely new man. And 10, nearly 11 years later, here we are having this conversation.
Yeah, and I think as you were saying that, for a lot of the men listening right now, they're probably experiencing that similar situation. I mean, I think it's a little more, it's not as taboo now, I'll say. I think people talk about it more now. I still personally, I still don't think that the general population of, physicians here, even in the United States, I still don't think that they are, up to, I don't want to say up to speed, but I still don't think they're on board as much with having to prescribe it because, you know, Ross, I hate to say it, I feel like for me, when I think about it, that is a solution that not only makes us feel better, it will actually solve a lot of other medical issues that we may be experiencing or we will experience. And I hate to say it, I think that's the problem. It kind of cuts into other areas, and I don't think everybody's so, eager to do that yet. So
Yeah.
that's again why I want to have you on. I think your story is important, and I think right now, great spot. I want to make sure people see this. I've read it. And for folks that are wondering, Ross wrote this book. I got the book. I read the book. I think it's fascinating. Check it out. It's up on Amazon. I'd highly recommend it for men out there, especially if you're feeling the way that, Ross was describing. Great, great investment, small investment, and I think it'll get you on the right path. Um, so Ross, with that being said, your book, the aging and the andropause. Um, I won't lie, when I first saw the title of your book, that word I've never really thought of or heard of used with men, andropause. Um, could you maybe talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So most, I should say, men have probably heard of the menopause. So that's when a lady goes through hormonal changes later in life. Men do the same thing, and it's called the andropause. So andrology is the study of men's health. Andropause is the cessation or reduction of hormones within a man's body. And what's fascinating is we haven't heard of it. It is an unusual word for many, and yet we all accept that both genders go through hormonal changes at puberty. That's just a given. We all know that. Why should only 50%, why should only one of the genders go through problems at the other end of life? Of course, when you say it like that, it's not logical. Both can happen at the start, both can happen at the end. The difference is in the menopause, it's quite abrupt. So the symptoms come on quite quickly, changes in mood, changes in body weight, changes in temperature, changes in general health. So it becomes quite obvious. In men, it's a real slow decline over many years. So what happens is we get used to those symptoms, which is the worst and most dangerous thing ever, because then we just accept it. We think we're getting old until one day you're sitting on the edge of the bed thinking, is this it? Like, I can't put my finger on it, but I know something's not right. And that's the common way it's described to us and to me, and how I remember, like, I'm pretty sure I'm not supposed to feel this way, but I'm going to push on because that's my job as a man. I'm the provider, I'm the protector. I've got to look after my family. I can't just not do these things. So I'm going to soldier on. Um, so for anyone who's listening, and if you think something's not quite right, get a test. It's like, I don't know, in the US, it's probably similar price to here. It's like $30 to have a finger prick test, and you can find out where you are on a spectrum.
Yeah, it's such solid advice. And as men, we, I had described to me once before is that when you kind of feel like something's wrong with your vehicle, you'll take it into the mechanic. You'll let somebody take a listen. But as men with our health, we kind of go through that. I like to call it the brain fog of just existing, and we're not optimized. We're not functioning at the level that we should be functioning. And Ross, and I think you would agree, we're not valuable to ourselves or to anybody around us because we're not who we are capable of being. And I think it's a sad, sad thing. Besides the book, you also have a company, and please correct me if I say this wrong. I don't think I will, but Alpha Genics.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So Alpha Genics, you mentioned it a little bit, but with Alpha Genics, I was looking up the website, things like that. I mean, you in general, you stress the importance of the accurate diagnosis of low testosterone. Um, for your, well, first let's start with Alpha Genics. What is Alpha Genics and what's the mission? What do you guys do?
Well, our mission is to touch at least 1 million men's lives and help them regain who they're supposed to be. So, the best version of themselves, the best husband, the best father, the best businessman, the best friend. And that comes from optimizing your body. As you say, if it was a car, you take it in, you get it serviced. It's exactly the same with ourselves as well. And there are so many people out there just going through the motions. As I say, they know something's not right. Maybe they speak to their GP, their family physician, um, and they are given poor advice. Because as you said, it's still little understood. Um, a lot of doctors and physicians out there still say things like TRT causes heart attacks, it causes strokes, it causes blood clots. You're going to die, if you do this. Whereas we know it's cardioprotective. We know it protects us against cognitive decline. We know it improves bone density, it improves muscle mass. It's less likely you're going to break a bone if you fall when you're older. And actually, breaking a bone, particularly the hip in later in life, is one of the major causes of mortality. And in fact, one of the doctors on our clinical board, he summed it up really eloquently when we were chatting, and he said two things. First, he said, if you want to be good at 80, you can't afford to be mediocre at 50. I was like, wow. And then the next thing he said, I'll never forget, because he's an A&E doctor as well, an emergency room doctor, I guess you would call it over there. And he said he knows the people that come into the ER who are going to walk out, and he knows the ones that are going to get wheeled out based on how much muscle they have to lose. And of course, testosterone is anabolic, it helps us build muscle. So if you fall, if you get pneumonia or something, you haven't got any muscle to lose, those 2 weeks when you're laid up in bed can be your last 2 weeks. But if you're strong, and we know muscle is the greatest determining factor of longevity, if you've got that muscle to lose, you walk out, go back into your own home, rehabilitate, and get back to life. So they were two things that really stuck with me. That was a really long way of saying, what we're trying to do at Alphagenics is return people to their optimal selves. And we do that with TRT, so with medication, but also by looking at things in a more holistic way as well. Because TRT is not magic. You can't sit on the sofa, have testosterone, eat pizza, and expect to be a hero. But actually, if you bring it into a healthy life, you are exercising frequently, looking after your mental health, eating quality food, getting good sleep. It's extraordinary. It changes people's lives.
Yeah, I just my own experience. The thing that I noticed the most when I went on it last year was the soreness. I I felt like when I would working out for a week, Ross, right? There was never a day when I wasn't just this perpetual soreness. And I
Mm.
thought in my mind, I'm like, it's what I have to do. This is life, right? And that was the thing that surprised me the most. Within probably two two doses, I was doing it, weekly. I noticed that that soreness was gone.
Yeah.
And it's your point. I think I want to stress that too to people is that, it isn't magic. It's not that if you're my recommendation is if you're, besides getting tested, if you're not doing the other things that you should be doing, let's start there too and start to do that. But yeah, it definitely, I was amazed at the how that soreness was gone. And, and then eventually I was really, really amazed with, as I worked out, I felt stronger. I just felt better, better in life. So Ross, what do you say though? Because I do still think there's a stigma over here with men, and probably not just over here in the States, but over there too. I do think men are afraid to talk about it. Um, I think men right away relate when they hear low testosterone, they relate it to the bedroom, and it's about I'm not, I'm going to be looked at as less of a man by everybody because I can't perform, I can't do that. I think, what I was hoping to get across today to people is like that's definitely not the way you should be thinking about it. It's more about what you said, but I do think there's still folks in the medical profession that will tell us there's cancer potential, there's all the bad things that could happen, when in reality it's having low testosterone, you're more at risk for a lot of these things. So how do you kind of break through the stigma, and what do you say to people as far as the medical aspect of it, that it's really not, is there studies, things like that that show that this isn't what we're hearing it is, as far as if you get on TRT?
Yeah, great point and great question. There are hundreds of studies now that disprove some of the myths that are still perpetuated. It causes prostate cancer, it causes heart attacks, it causes strokes. And we can now give definitive evidence that that isn't the case. And it is starting to filter through to the medical fraternity, but I feel we're probably at least a decade away from it being common knowledge. So we'll literally put that to the gentleman we speak to, say, actually, we can prove all these things. Ask your family doctor if they can prove that it causes heart attacks or it causes strokes. And the heart attack one's really interesting. It came in the 50s and 60s, and literally it was just a correlation. They just went, more men seem to die of cardiovascular disease and heart attacks than women. What do men have that women don't? More testosterone. It's probably testosterone that causes it. So we shouldn't give more testosterone because it causes heart attacks. That's literally how they decided. Um, the prostate cancer one as well came from a study which I think had 3 people in it. One of the people didn't finish, and one of them was castrated, I believe, and none of them had their testosterone checked before the study started. One person had prostate cancer, and they said, "Oh yeah, it definitely causes that." Just awful quality studies, and we've believed this for decades, and unfortunately, it's still spouted by a lot of people. So we literally give this evidence to the gentleman that we speak to and say, do your own research, talk to anyone you want. This is the most up to date, modern research that you can consider. It isn't without risk. There are 2 main things, which is it can affect fertility. And if you've on too high a dose, it can affect your blood pressure a little. It's not a contraceptive, though. What we say to people is 60% of men it will affect fertility, but don't rely on this as a contraceptive still. But for most men, they're like, I've had my children, I'm in my late 30s, 40s, 50s. That's not an issue.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, maybe TMI, but I took care of that after my 4th child with a vasectomy, so I didn't have to worry about that. I was good with the amount of children I had, and you know, uh, plus over here, I thought it was safer for me to do that than for my wife to go through it on the other side. So I said, you
Yeah.
know what, I'll be a man. I'll get it done. So yeah, but no, it's a really good point. But Ross, isn't it interesting though that when the things that men think about as far as being a man, right? Like you mentioned it, right? Like that's so important to men, like being able to reproduce, fertility, things like that. And I think, and what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, because I think you're doing a really good job of this, especially on LinkedIn with a lot of your other content around the mindset. I think we got to change our mindsets as men. What do you say to someone who's really struggling? They're starting to think about this, but how do you kind of get across to them like this isn't you being less of a man? This is actually you regaining to be more of a man.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes from my own personal story, in the fact that I am willing to share that and very open. We spoke just before we hit record there to say, for 8 years, I was the other gentleman. I did keep it to myself. I didn't talk about it openly. I did feel emasculated. Like, why am I having to take something exogenous, synthetic, to make me more of a man? So I'm not I'm not discounting the fact it's not an easy switch to make. It took me 8 years to make that, to come to that realization. But I think when people hear me say that, it all of a sudden, it hits home, and they can see what a difference it makes. So we're just open, we're honest. We have those conversations. Our doctors as well, they're all on TRT. They've all had low testosterone for a variety of reasons, from environmental, secondary hypergonadism, to primary, where one of our doctors lost a testicle due to cancer. So we can empathize, we can put ourselves in that situation, and again, I guess we just tell the truth. I feel I feel more masculine now than I did when I was in my 20s. I build muscle easier now at nearly 47 than I did when I was 27 or 17. Like, it's quite incredible, and I'm continuing to get better 10 years into this journey. And I think that resonates with people when they can hear it and see the truth.
Yeah, I think just I mean, I'll say it. I think just looking at you, you embody that more of a masculine person, right? And I think you say it's the truth, and I think your doctors there at Alpha Genics, I think the fact that you guys can relate and that you're on it yourself is is a big deal. I mean, listen, I don't mean it wrong, but I think for years, I mean, the doctor I saw over here going back into my 30s was, probably as heavy as I was, and I never really correlated, why am I listening to this guy, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, um, what do you say to men or people in general, Ross? 'Cause I think this is a big deal, and you seem like a person who does this. How important is it that we advocate for our own health and we really get smart about it and do our own research? Like getting the book, another plug,
Yeah.
sorry. But it's the what do you say to people about that?
Tell people to not believe anything that they read or come across online without doing their own research. So critical thinking is absolutely key. And I think we saw that a lot, obviously, during the pandemic as well, when, all of a sudden people were just looking online or being told something on the telly, and they just blindly believed it without doing research. Now, regardless of what you think have happened during that time, and I spoke to a lot of doctors over the last few years, what was missing is critical thought, critical reasoning. A lot of people just went, oh, well, guy on a telly said something, so I'm going to believe it. Well, have you researched it? Have you read it? Have you done your own research? No, I haven't. And that was a great example of, you just shouldn't just believe anything. If you went to see your doctor and the doctor said, I think you should jump off a cliff, that's probably going to cure your headache, you would say no. I'd like to think so. Um, we've got to be doing our own research, and we do put that research into the hands of the people we speak to and say, go away, make your own decision. It's a big decision. It's probably something you'll be on for the rest of your life. So when you're ready, come back.
Great point you just made there about I think that's something that scares people, Ross, is the thinking of anything, I might be on this for the rest of my life. What about the people who, listen, listen, it's worth it to me, and I don't think the cost is, too much. I think it's a benefit that people should consider and men should consider and be willing to spend the money on. And I don't think it breaks the bank by any means. But what about for people, they hear that and they are afraid to start something because they're afraid, well, what happens if I can't continue to do it? I can't afford it. I have to come off of it. What does that then do to me? Is that dangerous?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. It's one we do get asked. So when you start taking testosterone, it tricks your brain into thinking you've got loads of it. So all of a sudden, you turn off your own production. So your LH and FSH, the chemicals, the hormones in your testicles, don't produce any more testosterone. Now, you don't realize, you still feel great because we've put this synthetic amount in, so you don't know that's happening. But if you stopped in the future, what happens is your synthetic testosterone diminishes over a period of weeks or 5 weeks, and then you realize you've got none left. So you're going to feel terrible for a time. In most people, that kicks back in over weeks and months, and it will go back to where you naturally sit. Bearing in mind, if you've been on TRT for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, it won't go back to where it was when you started because you're 5, 10, 20 years older, and it goes down by 1 to 3% every year. So it will likely bounce back, but you'll be back to where you were before, which was symptomatic. So for most men, they say, well, I don't mind that it's turned off because I can't feel it. And I would rather feel optimal than mediocre.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that is a great way to put it. And I wanted to try to clear that up for people because I think some people think it's dangerous. You know, you go on it, you go off it. You know, it kind of reminds me of, and it's kind of ironic, but medications, you know, years ago when I was at my worst, I was on heart medicine, but the label said, you know, do not stop taking this without, you know, speaking to a physician. They make it like you could almost die if you stop taking it. Ross, what do you say? And I don't know if you guys do this with alpha genics, but I know for me, along with the testosterone, I was actually having part of the shot I'm getting was HCG was in there to help with some of that as far as, you know, if I ever had to go off it, you know, helping trying to keep me at least to where I was. I think when I got my blood work run, it wasn't as low as I thought it was going to be. And I know the number is probably different. I think I was at like 560 or something like that at
Yeah.
like 51. So, but I know that. But do you guys do anything like that along with the testosterone? Do you put anything in it? And what type of testosterone are you guys using at AlphaGenics?
So yes to HCG, and that is something that we can offer. Um, about a third of our gentlemen use it. So for those that haven't heard of it, it tricks the brain into continuing your natural production. So if you did stop or you went on holiday for a few weeks and you forgot to take it with you, you've got that natural baseline in there. Um, a third of men who take HCG love HCG because it increases libido and it increases penile sensitivity, so sex is better. A third of men hate it. It makes them feel nauseous, makes them feel a bit sick, they just can't tolerate it. And a third of men, it doesn't make a difference. So I'm in the middle. It makes no difference to me. My another symptom, if your testosterone turns off, is your testicles can atrophy. They can get 10 to 15% smaller. So that happened to me, and HCG makes no difference. And I've tried it, and I've not tried it, and I've tried it again to see if it does anything, and it just doesn't. So yes, we do offer it for the men that want it. It's generally the younger men who maybe don't want their testicles to shrink, or they're still thinking, you know, potentially about children and fertility. In terms of what do we offer? Well, testosterone comes in all manner of forms, as you know, gels, creams, patches, nasal sprays, buccal patches that go in the mouth, injections. Injections you do once every 3 months, injections you do every day, and everything in between. It now comes in oral tablets as well, on Deca now it does. The two most effective are compounded creams and injectables. Testosterone cypionate is the one that's been around for the longest. It's got the most research around it, and that tends to be the one that's considered the gold standard by most. So that's the one that most of our gentlemen use. We do have a cohort on Sustanon as well, which is a propionate blend, which you actually can't get in America. We speak to some Americans and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe it. You can get Sustanon. It's a faster acting ester. It's cheaper in the UK, much cheaper for us to buy. So our gentlemen don't pay as much for that. So they're the two main ones. Now, in terms of is one better? We don't think so. A lot of it's personal preference. If you don't want to inject, go with a compounded cream. If you want more convenience, injectables are generally better. You know, there's no waiting period while it rubs in. You don't have to worry about contaminating someone if you touched your child or you touched your wife, all those sorts of things. So it's a bit faster, but it's not better.
So the process, as far as someone comes in to you, I'm always curious about this. I know for me at least, And, I've been doing more research on this to see if there was a more convenient way. I know there's a lot of places here in the States that are popping up where you go every week, you go to the office and they inject for you. I am starting to see now the more research I'm doing where they're making it where the injectables are becoming available for you to have for home use. What's the process like with Alpha Genics? How do you guys do that with your clients?
So we teach our gentlemen how to inject themselves. So if they're going to do an intermuscular injection, might go into the deltoid or the thigh. If you're injecting more frequently, we encourage a subcutaneous injection, so into the belly fat usually in most men. And they might do that anywhere from twice a week to every day. But we teach them how to do that so they feel comfortable doing it themselves.
You mentioned the schedule on that. What do you guys see as far as your research and you're showing, man, as far as like some of the stuff I've seen and read was, weekly, for example, right? By the time you go back, like it's almost it kind of cycles through. Do you see more benefit with, lower level dosing and doing it more frequently to keep it more within the bloodstream, or doing that bigger dose and then doing it less frequently?
There's a little bit of convenience coming into this as well. And also, we're very much of the opinion that we're all different. So we're definitely not, a cookie cutter type of solution where everybody gets the same protocol. All 8 billion of us on the planet look different. Our insides are different too. So we really listen to the patient, find out what works. Occasionally, if you do one dose a week, you get this big spike of testosterone, and that can affect mood, it can affect maybe irritability or blood pressure. So spacing it out lessens the chance of that happening. There is an argument to say more frequent doses more naturally mimic how testosterone is produced, where we produce it on a nighttime when we're asleep in the testicles. But the difference is a synthetic testosterone has a 4 to 6 day half-life anyway, so it's never going to be the same as a natural production. With that half-life, though, we tend to see that 2 really is the minimum that someone would go for. If you go a full week, sometimes your metabolism might get cypionate out of your system within sort of 4 to 5 days. So then you've got a bit of a lull until you inject again. So most of our men will have at least 2, and then depending on symptoms, might go 3, 4, 5 times a week.
You mentioned convenience. I did want to pick your brain a little bit about that. Some of this stuff I've been looking into in the research, it seems like they are making progress as far and I think for me it would be a game changer, right? I think if we were able to pop a pill orally and get the same as the injection, I think we'd be really good. I feel like I've been looking, there's some clinics over here now that are some compounding pharmacies that are at least making it like they've kind of hit that mark where they feel like it's just as effective. I don't know from what I've read if I feel like that's totally true yet, because, and Ross, you would know this better than me, but from what I've seen, it has more to do with how it's processed by the body, the bloodstream, the liver. Are you guys seeing any advances in that area? And do you think that's far off where it's going to be more readily available through the form of a pill?
Yeah, so at the moment so there's 4 main esters in the world. Cypionate and enanthate are pharmacologically almost identical, propionate blends, and then undecanoate or deca, sometimes that's called. And there is an undecanoate tablet. In fact, I think there's 3 that are licensed at the moment. Kaiser Trex is one of the biggest ones. And we looked at the research a lot on that. They're working to the old guidelines, the British Society of Sexual Medicine guidelines, the International Society of Sexual Medicine guidelines, which say that normal is around 600. So the tablets are effective at getting you to about 600. Problem is, most men are still symptomatic at 600. You want to be high hundreds, even low thousands. We have gentlemen, although we use a different scale, we have men in the low thousands, and they have no negative side effects. Their blood pressure's fine. They feel amazing symptomatically. So we're happy taking people there. And at the moment, tablets don't do that. But having said that, there is good evidence coming out that simply double dosing the tablet will get you into a symptom-free range. So that I think is something that we'll probably see becoming more used over coming years. They are new. It's metabolized by the liver, which is the big difference. So, I personally would want to wait a couple of years to see what happens there. Is there any studies that say that's negative? We don't know yet. There's not a lot of long-term studies, but I can see it's easier. No injections, no scar tissue, no chance of soreness, anything like that. You just pop a pill or maybe two, and you're done. So I do think that is a way that will probably go in the future.
Yeah, I'm definitely keeping an eye on it myself. I know, at least for me, by my actual career, I'm into healthcare data analytics. So I'm a geek when it comes to the data side of it. So I love looking at those studies. I think you probably see this too. The thing that always scares me with studies though is, and any type of data scientist can make that data look to fit the narrative they want it to fit. So I always get concerned about the cohort they used, who are they basing things off. So yeah, I want to definitely keep an eye on it, but I think it'll be a huge benefit for men and for society if we get to that point.
Yeah.
So Ross, I wanted to end with this, and we start to touch on it a little bit, but as far as alphagenics and your goals and alphagenics goals, I mean, what are you guys seeing for the future, and what are you hoping to do? Are there any plans to try to, go further with alphagenics, maybe to America, other countries?
100%, yeah. So we at the moment we have men that fly in from all over the world to see our doctors. We've just launched in the Middle East, so we have clients now in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. We are pretty close to agreeing a franchise agreement in Malta, so tiny little island there in the Mediterranean. And we have got some talks going on in Wyoming, actually. So
Mm.
there may well be a chance for Alphagenics to come over towards your side of the world.
Yeah, I would actually, after reading your book, I would love that. I think you would probably end up having me as a client if you guys were over here. I would love that. Personally, I think that would be really, really cool. Well, Ross, is there anything else? I mean, I know when I look at your LinkedIn, you definitely seem like, and I want to just touch on this a little bit, but seems like you have multiple interests and you're doing a lot of really cool things. Anything else that you kind of would like to talk about here, or let people know things you're doing?
Um, Men's health is my passion, if you like. Healthcare is my background. We own a number of different healthcare businesses, and they allow us to do what we do in our men's health business, which is, fund the growth and get into those other countries. I also mentor and coach predominantly men as well who wanting to scale their companies. But we touch a lot on health. Personally, I believe health is the foundations of all success. Whether you want to be a great business person, whether you want to be a great husband, a great father, if you haven't got your health sorted, it's very, very difficult. And personally, if I think of all the people I look up to, um, they're all healthier than me. You said something about your doctor earlier, and their weight. I don't look up to anyone who's overweight, unhealthy, drinks like a fish on a weekend. It's just not, I think, what we aspire to be. So happy to chat to anyone who's thinking about that as well.
You know what? That was really, really a poignant statement you made there. And I'm so glad you said it, because I do think it's I mean, listen, pardon the pun, I think it's the elephant in the room, so to speak, right? I think that people don't say it, but I I tell people all the time, and I finally had a doctor say it to me, but I wish somebody would have told me earlier in life that, hey, you're a mess. Go go get your shit together and fix yourself.
Yeah.
I think we are too much on the side of being politically correct and afraid to hurt people's feelings and what we're really doing to society and people we care about and love. We think we're loving and caring about the people by not hurting their feelings. And in reality, what we're doing is we're enabling them to go down a dark path and be the unhealthiest version of themselves. So I think what you with Alpha Genics, what you guys are doing is much needed work, Ross. And that's why I really, really like having folks like you on the podcast to talk about this information. I think people will find it really, really valuable. That being said, anything, where can people find you as far as what you're doing?
So alphagenics.co.uk, alphagenics with an X is the best place. There's a lot of information on there. You can link to our YouTube, where I think we're up to 65 episodes now, with some incredibly talented healthcare professionals all talking about their version of health, whether it's psychedelic assisted therapy, right through to exercise and nutrition, and of course with a healthy smattering of TRT and men's health as well.
Fantastic. Well, Ross, like I said, I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to jump on here. I think it's going to benefit a lot of people. Again, I say it all the time. I think I do this podcast now more selfishly because I get so much out of speaking to all you great knowledgeable guest. So it's been definitely a good thing for me, and I think it will resonate with a lot of people. So Ross, thanks again. I wish you a lot of luck. Looking forward to seeing what you and Alpha Genics do in the future, and really hope that maybe it pops up here in the States at some point. That would be great to see. So thanks again, Ross.
Thank you so much, Charles. Have a great day. Take care.
You too. And thank you everyone for watching. Please reach out, check out Ross, check out his book, check out Alphagenics. I think you'll find it really, really useful. So take care, everyone. Thanks again. Bye.
This has been the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.